made it possible to build global companies in half the time and half the resources than 5 years ago. Today, brands have a real opportunity to reach massive audiences. But to really take that seriously, companies need to think from a global scale. Companies need to embrace a new way of doing business. In almost any industry, international reach is a must for high-performing business. But going global means moving beyond the one-size-fits-all approach. The key to global expansion isn't establishing offices in every corner in the world, nor is the use of a specific tool or cloud tool. It's a culture of diversity. When yes means no, or maybe, or yes. International business deals not only with cross borders, but also with cross cultures. Countries can differ drastically when it comes to work ethic, willingness to take risks, the way of the structure of the organization, choice of working time, and blending work and play. Culture's values direct influence on the way people negotiate. Sometimes the word maybe is a simple, polite version of saying no. Depending on where you are in the world, your potential business partner may prefer a quick and painless deal, or on the other side, a gradual negotiation. Solutions that make sense in one context may be entirely wrong in the other, and with a homogeneous, monocultural team, you run the risk of missing the important economic, social, and cultural distinctions. Achieving success in emerging markets like China, Brazil, India requires a very intimate understanding of these countries, their cultures, their business practices, and their values. As your company expands across geographies, you're bound to encounter unexpected barriers. But a diverse group of individuals is your most valuable asset in removing these barriers. For example, a few years ago, I wasn't sure about the very aggressive sales tactic by one of our Russian sales managers. Because she knew how to use the cultural norm to her advantage, she was able to successfully sign a massive client where cautious approach was likely to fail. Drawing strengths from diversity. Being open to diversity keeps you humble, honest, curious, and teaches you flexibility and understanding. The business benefits are real and measurable. A survey shows that ethnic diverse companies were 35% more likely to outperform non-diverse ones in their respective industries. Major demographic and socioeconomic shifts have reshaped the world in the last decade. Building a multinational, multicultural company is a great start, but it's also important to value what people at different ages and genders bring to the table. In 2015, millennials became the largest generation in the US workforce. People under the age of 25 are half of the world's population. Young employees bring fresh ideas to the table, and they're very natural with new technologies adaptations. But different countries view seniority in a different way. A 35-year-old CEO in maybe London or New York is not very surprising. But in China, it's extremely rare for a manager to be younger than his employees, and some even lie about their age just to avoid the uncomfortable situations. A company that sees the value in both young techies and experienced professionals will gain the benefits of the varied perspectives. Companies that are more diversified in general were found to be 15% more likely to outperform in their respective industries. More so, women are becoming the world's most important consumers and purchasing decision makers. By 2018, their combined income will be $18 trillion. Having a gender-balanced team will help you to understand and tap into this critical segment market. A company draws its strengths from its employees. The more diverse the group, the more knowledge, skills, and insights they have to offer. Business in a brave new world. A heterogeneous corporate culture, one that combines different nationalities, genders, and respects employees of all ages, has significant benefits. Diversity has a positive psychological impact on these employees as well. Working with people from different makes us more creative, more collaborative, and building a diversity into your team only establishes a culture that celebrates differences, innovative ideas, sparks curiosity, and encourages us to be more open-minded. It helps to turn your employees into a savvy global citizens with a mindset and perspective to thrive anywhere. This flexibility opens the door to growth in the potential of challenging environments. The global markets hold massive growth potential, but a global perspective is a must. The only way to maintain this perspective is by expanding boundaries. A diverse workforce isn't just something to make your company look good on the paper. It's the best tool you've got to meet the demands from your investors, your clients, your partners, and the consumers across the board. Thank you very much, and we'll have soon a panel about this topic.
Please welcome to the stage moderator Caroline Howard, Executive Digital Editor, Forbes Media, and panelists Yasmin Abu Freha, Co-founder and Executive Director, Genesis, Anne-Marie Imafidon, CEO and Head Stemex, and Jill Zhao Zhu, Investment Director, Greystar.
Hello, everyone. How was lunch today? Was it good? Yeah? Everybody cool? Excellent. Okay, so we are here today to talk about diversity as an asset. So I think the first thing that we would do here is there's a lot of jargon walking around, and people walk around with assumptions about what words mean. So I want everybody on this panel to talk a little bit about how do they define diversity. So whoever wants to start can start.
Okay, so I can start. In my opinion, I think diversity is an open mind and open ears. I think the most important thing is the ability to listen to other people and to learn from them. I'll just give you an example. I founded Genesis, which is an NGO that deals with preventing genetic diseases. And there was a prior trial to do that, I think 20 years ago with the Bedouin community. But what they did is that they tried to test for a certain disease that was deafness. And it didn't work. It didn't work because people didn't come to be tested. And after the research, they asked people, why don't you do that? And then they said, you know, deafness in our community it's us, it's who we are. It's our tradition, it's our family. We don't want to eliminate that. And if you listen to people, this is how you get diverse points of views, and you get many opinions and many people helping you.
Right, so my definition of diversity comes from my personal experience as well as my experience traveling and living around the world. So I was born in China and then lived in Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, London, Berlin, Boston, Charleston, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes involuntarily, but traveling and working and studying all these different regions have given me sort of a view of global sensitivities, I would say. So my version of diversity has a lot to do with globalism.
So for me, diversity is all about difference, when things are different. And what's great is that, you know, as a human being or as a person, there are all different elements of diversity that you have or that you bring to the table. So, you know, I'm black, I'm female, I'm young, I'm from East London. Anyone here from East London? I love Nando's. Anyone here love Nando's? Right, so for me, you know, Nando's crew. So for me, diversity means that difference and embracing all those different elements. There are some people who like Nando's, the others who don't like Nando's. There are some people from East London and some who aren't. So those are the different layers that I have in diversity.
You know, I realized actually that we've all gone into these definitions, but we haven't really explained what it is that each of you do. And I think that for us to really get to the bottom of diversity as an asset, I'd like each of you maybe in 1 or 2 sentences to tell everybody about the work that it is you do that speaks to both diversity and in some cases your work isn't about diversity, it's sort of more about who you are. So Yasmin, why don't you tell everybody, you know, I'm a Bedouin doctor, like people don't know that.
Correct. So I'm a Bedouin doctor. Some say the first Bedouin doctor, but no, that's not true. What we're doing is that I co-founded Genesis with an amazing team of 4 women, and we're actually aiming to decrease the prevalence of genetic diseases in closed communities, specifically Bedouins, because they tend to marry inside the family. What we do is provide them with free screening genetic tests, and then we provide with the opportunity to test a genetic match before arranged marriage. And this is how we can help them with planning families better.
So I work for Greystar. It's the largest multifamily rental residential investor in the world. So, but as Caroline was saying, my passion about diversity very much comes from my own global experience. My firm is on the verge of opening an office in APAC, together with Macquarie, as well as opening an office in continental Europe, as well as London. But through this journey, it's very much a personal journey, as well as sort of a career progression to get working in various different parts of the world.
So I run STEMETS, which is an organisation based in the UK. We work across Europe, and we're all about inspiring the next generation of female technologists. So we're building this generation with events that are free, that are fun, and where there's lots of food for them.
Fantastic. I actually also want to point out that on this panel here, these 3 women, 14 languages speak amongst themselves, which is incredible. So, like, diversity is very much about being able to speak to people in their own language, I think. So, so let's talk a bit about this notion of, is diversity really an asset? Because I think there might be an argument that could be made that says it's frankly, it's not. Like, level the playing field. Don't look at the differences, stick with the similarities.
I can go first because this has very much come up as a big topic these days with the rise of nationalism, with Brexit, with Trump. There's been a lot of talk about whether this globalization is good, globalism is good. So I am obviously in the camp, yes, globalization, and I have some stats to back it up. I'm sure it's not an unfamiliar chart for you guys, but I don't know, how many people here have heard of a chart called the elephant chart? Raise your hand if you have heard of the elephant chart. Okay, so it's actually less than I thought. So it's essentially a graph that's showing the change between global distribution of wealth from the lowest percentile to the richest percentile. As you can see, I didn't draw this elephant, but it's pretty cute. So the majority of the world brackets from say 10% to 75%, people's wealth have risen to average of 30 to 50% in the past 30 years. And this is a force to be reckoned with. 500 million people have been risen out of poverty, which is defined as average wage of below $1.25 per day. So, and that would not have happened without diversity of globalization, of trading, of transfer of goods, culture, art. So I do believe that even though there is temporary setback of nationalism, and that is something that we need to address, and people cannot be left behind, but the whole trend of globalization is good. It's helping to promote people out of poverty, helping people with finding jobs and opportunities that wouldn't be able to do within their own nation, but on a whole global scale, they have a lot more opportunities now.
How is globalization impacting the community that you work with getting women involved with STEM careers, girls involved with STEM careers?
So globalization has opened up the opportunity for these girls in this space, and I think with us it's about building that generation and building that network, and having a more global outreach or outlook has meant that actually, first we talk a lot about identity and working with the girls and them seeing themselves as technologists or seeing themselves as scientists where they may not see that in the media. And so globalization has allowed them to see other girls in other parts of the world who have similar passions, have similar skills, and are similar to them, even though they might speak a completely different language or be in a completely different climate or space. So we've seen that it's opened it up and it's allowed the girls to see themselves as role models, but see other role models who might not look like them, but look like them.
Now with the Bedouin community, and I actually have to tell you that I had the good fortune to visit Yamin's community last weekend. You were talking.
All welcome, by the way.
Yeah, you were talking a lot about like keeping the tradition, but embracing the new technology that's all part of globalization. Can you go a little bit into how that weaves into your work?
Right, so we're actually connecting old traditions with new technologies because we believe that there is a lot of knowledge in old traditions, and it's not always, going forward without knowing your past. And we're having many ventures on this issue. One is with what we do with genetic testing, and actually what we do, for example, is that we understand that there's something very powerful and a lot of advantage in marrying your cousin. For example, in the Bennett community, it is very important for a father to marry her daughter to her cousin because he trusts the cousin. He knows who his daughter is marrying into. And when you understand that, when you understand the culture, and you're not coming as patronizing and saying, you guys you don't know what you're doing, you're bringing too many diseases into this world, then this is where you can actually bring and bridge this old tradition to the new technologies and bring the new technologies into them and say, okay, now that I understand that you need to marry your cousin, I will help you choose the better cousin. And then we can provide them with IVFs and tests during pregnancies, and this is where they're more receptive. I think there's a huge debate in Israel about the difference between melting pot policy and multiculturalism, and this is different. Okay, it's not the same. Melting pot is actually saying, I want to make you the same as me. But multiculturalism is saying, I understand that you're different. I think it's beautiful that you're different. I want to learn your culture. I want you to learn mine, and let's build a society out of that.
So, I'm sure all of you have noticed that this panel, this moderator, this is an all-female panel, and the topic is diversity. So I would like to get everyone's thought on this stage because in some ways I do think that it takes female voices to put things like diversity and empowerment of fringe communities on the agenda. But I also think that this is not a fringe issue. It's not a soft issue. It's very much a mainstream and, to your point, business issue. So I would like for everyone to confront sort of their presence right here on the stage.
So I think what you're saying is correct. I mean, it's a shame actually that it's just the women that are talking about diversity. As a footnote, there was a guy that was supposed to be on the panel with us, we won't name and shame. But I think it's really important actually that we have all voices being part of that conversation. So I don't know how many of you have seen Hidden Figures, the film that's just out. There we go, a bit of a whoop for Hidden Figures there. But that talks about the story of the women at NASA who were computers back in the 1960s. And there's a lot of things that happen in the film, so I won't spoil it too much for you. But there is one scene where Kevin Costner, who plays a major role in the film, gets really annoyed. So this is the 60s. You've got these women, and they're coloured women, as they called them then, who have completely separate toilets because that's what segregation was. That's how it happened in the 60s. And you see him get really annoyed at one scene, or during one scene in the film, and he takes a crowbar to the sign for these toilets, because this woman and his team is having to run to the loo every day. She spends maybe 40 minutes per trip going to the toilet. And he says, we all pee the same colour at NASA. But it's interesting that he's the person that has to open that up, and he's the person that has to act and use his privilege to open it up, because he's seen how much diversity is an asset to his team, and of course to the space race, and then America ended up, we see how history plays out. So I think it's definitely something that, men in particular need to be a part of the conversation and need to be using their privilege as much as we as privileged women, because we are privileged women, are opening up and moving the conversation and moving it forward. But it is something that, it's not, you're not doing it for the women, you're actually doing it for yourself. So diversity in the space around you and in your culture at work or in life adds to you and adds to the value that you can bring. So we always give this example of the UN have recently launched this initiative called MARC, so Men Advancing Real Change, and they talk about, there are some people who are maybe more predisposed to be involved in diversity initiatives. So if you're a man who has a child, who has a daughter, or if you're a man who's a minority in any other way, then seemingly from their research, your sense of fairness is a lot more acute than if you're a man who maybe doesn't. And they've talked about the fact that actually, if you are constantly in an alpha environment, or constantly in an all-male environment, the things it does to you, and if you're talking about your mental health or about all the other aspects that you bring to work, it actually reduces your efficacy and it reduces your happiness and it reduces your productivity because you've only got one kind of person around you. So there's quite a lot of a body of research, but also just common sense. Like, you don't want to go to work and it just be guys. It just be all the bros get together doing bro stuff. Kind of don't build good products. You build products for bros and not really for anybody else. So it is really important. So join in, guys.
Well, so I think in business, especially in finance, so I'm in private equity right now and I used to be in investment banking. There's generally two approaches from women, because we're absolutely minority in finance as women. There's generally two approaches. One is to be like a guy. You just try to blend in. When they go play golf, you go play golf. When they go fishing, shooting, or anything. I used to work for a US Southern firm where the quarterly investment meeting is actually going shooting in the backyard. So and you blend in because you're the only one and everybody else is doing it. And you either go join or you miss out. There's a second approach, which is like, hey guys, let's not go shooting at this meeting. Let's go do something else that's like, female friendly. It's not necessarily be the easiest thing to ask when you're the junior person, when you're the only one out, when you're the one who cannot blend in. And they've done this as a tradition for the firm in the past 10, 15 years. But I do think it's important for women to be like, hey, this is not a comfortable activity for me. Rather than going golfing this year, maybe, we can go, just grab dinner, lunch, or, social activities where it does not require physical, shooting an animal or something, So I have done this in the past where generally there's pretty divided sort of consequence. Like, once it's like, oh, you're out. Like, you're just out. Like, we're gonna go have fun ourselves and you don't wanna join, that's fine. But there's also potentially the other opportunity where they're like, oh, we didn't realize before, we didn't try to ignore you, we just didn't know it. So, and I think that is where, it's important for we to act first and for we to influence people around us and to start changing the culture.
Before you answer, Yasmin, I just wanted to ask you a question about that. Like, how do you use that singular voice of yours? I don't know how many women versus guys there are on your team that's going hunting versus non-hunting, but how do you leverage that sort of, let's do something different, into more of an institutional outlook, like how the company actually operates? Jill. Yeah.
So, sorry, I didn't get the question, sorry.
When you're raising your hand and say, let's not go hunting, let's, do something else, how do you take that voice of yours and leverage into something, that's more of an institutional, how it changes the direction of your company?
So I'm actually on the board of also a women's committee. We call it LEAD, L-E-L-D. It doesn't really stand for anything, but it's actually a bunch of women in my firm. We got together. Most of them are from front office. We have all kind of like had 5-10 years of experience in finance and seeing the male colleagues get promoted faster, seeing that networking, formal and informal, has a very strong impact of your career progression. And we went to the executive committee of the company and said, hey, we want to set up this thing. We want to have a formalized, institutionalized program to help women in our company. And that was very well accepted by the senior leaders. Because sometimes you do need a bit of a top-down approach, a bit of sort of like support from the top to help it. Another way to do it is to benchmark it with the ones who are more progressive in the industry. So for example, McKinsey does like a very good women's program that there's a lot to learn from for all the other companies that are in sort of the business realm of the world, to learn from where the industry leaders are, and rather than stick with sort of the old school way, in the very prominent in the finance industry. So going back to the diversity in business, I think diversity is business, and it is good business. And this is not, it's not as being, a female panel. I don't think it's a soft issue or it's something that concerns only women. Because if you want to have a good business and you want to do a good market research, for example, you have to think diverse. Because when you do market research, you think about certain sectors in population. If you have diversity in your own team, you won't have to, actively think about it. This will be natural to you. I'm happy to say that our team is only women, but it's very, very diverse. I come from the medical field. I have partners that come from the education field and from the law field and other fields. And I'm Muslim Bedouin, and we have an ultra-Orthodox, we have an Israeli Jew, and we have another Israeli Jew that came from Ukraine. So, and it's amazing to see how different each of us is thinking and how good it does for our own company.
When you use the word soft, it reminded me of a story when I had the good fortune to interview Melinda Gates about a year and a half ago. She actually said to me that in the beginning of the Gates Foundation, she was uncomfortable confronting women's issues because she didn't want to be seen as soft. And she realized that she was getting more and more into the business of the foundation, that the women's issues were the hard issues. They're the issues that are almost intractable and are really difficult to move. And so that's when she decided to fully embrace this. So using the word embrace, I just want to point out that each of you, in your efforts working in diversity to create solutions and to change the world, actually, you're using, a very personal stance, like you're using your experience as a Bedouin who's living in a Jewish society. You're using your experience as a Black woman who's brilliant, who's exposed to this is a very impressive woman who has an amazing history of accepted into Johns Hopkins University at age 13, I believe, and getting to her master's degree at Oxford at 27. But this is all very personal for you. You just iterated all the places that you've lived. Why is this so personal? And does that give you a certain power that you wouldn't have purely academic exercise?
So I think for me, it's personal in that, so even though I did all that stuff when I was 2 years old or 3 years old or whatever, it was always something that I really enjoyed, and there was no inhibitions, or there's no one saying it's not something you can do. So me doing maths and computer science, as this Nando's lovely girl from East London, it was something where it was just normal, it was just part of me and I was allowed to do it. And it's only now, being a little bit older, that I've met other people for whom that's been a barrier or that's something that's got in their way. And I think the point for me when I started STEMex was that, I've always been like that. I'm going to have children at some point. If I have daughters, firstly, I don't want to be part of this shrinking minority. So, the last 30 years, the number of women in tech has been in freefall. I don't want to be, one of the last surviving people, my daughters to think that I'm a weirdo, or my children to think I'm a weirdo for being that one woman left in tech. But they're also going to be 50% of me, and if it's something they want to do, I want them also to feel comfortable in it. And I think, my love for technology started off when I was really young, was nurtured, and I was given that great environment. So it's how do I give more girls that environment? But again, because it makes business sense. So, it's about my girls feeling empowered, it's about social mobility, but it's also about making sure that when people are building products, they meet everyone's needs. So the example I always give, there's a big company that we all know who a couple of years ago released a new mobile platform. And as part of it, this new feature was that it measured everything to do with your health. It was absolutely everything to do with your health. Your heart rate, the steps you take in a day. you have, and they kind of released it as this big, amazing new tech launch. And it was funny because for 50%, roughly 50% of us, there's a really big part of our health that they seem to have just forgotten. And it was either they didn't listen to the people that experienced this, or they listened to them, or they heard them, sorry, and then just completely ignored it, right? And it's menstruation. So some of us here menstruate, a couple of people here have periods. Some of you will have heard of periods before. This tech company hadn't, right? So put all this money into this massive marketing launch and have forgotten such a big thing. And the other example was another tech giant, who again I won't name, who put out this photo recognition software only a couple of years ago. That, you know, if you uploaded all your photos, you search for skyscrapers, it would give you an image of a skyscraper. You search for car, it'd give you an image of a car. If you search for gorilla, it'd give you images of black people that were in your photos as well. Which is incredible, that's a tech product that went out from a big company, it wasn't a small company. So you continue to have these things. And you know, the final example I'll give, and this is something that, you know, we've had the whole time, the first seat belts, right? So most of us have used seat belts, airbags. Some of you might even be here today because you've used a seat belt whilst traveling in questionable countries. And you know, the first seat belts and airbags were built to the specification of men. So they killed women and children, which was not the point of that product or that innovation, right? So we've got to make sure, for me anyway, I don't want to die anytime soon, so we've got to make sure that the new products that we're using appeal to everybody and meet everyone's needs.
I think things that we're passionate about always comes from something personal, whether it's extreme joy or extreme pain. Quite often it's like extreme pain. I think for me, like that kind of, oh, I really care about this came from when I was a much younger person, when I was in Germany by myself, not really speaking the language yet. Yeah, and you know, being the only Chinese in an all-white neighborhood in suburban Germany isn't an easy thing. And you know, in high school, people make fun of you because of your, you know, like your appearance a lot. And I was getting made fun of because I look Asian. Well, I am Asian. So, you know, like, there is nothing I could do about it, but it definitely hurt, right? Because you're different, you're just so standing out, and there was nothing I could do to make it go away. So I think that was like the biggest point of my life, where like, oh, I really care about diversity. I really care about like, for people who look different, who are different, who, you know, like come from a different background, or interested in different things, you know, like different genders, you know, like they all deserve to be in an environment that are fairly treated, and, you know, they all can excel at what they do well, which, you know, have nothing to do with their appearance, their background, and all that things. So I think, you know, that's the moment where I really determined that I am going to spend a big part of my life on these issues, because, you know, it hurted a lot, and I can still feel it if I want to feel it today, right? So.
I agree with what Jill just said. It's always personal, and in my personal story, I always felt different. You know, as a Bedouin Muslim Arab living in Israel, and I was raised in a Jewish town. I speak Hebrew much better than I speak Arabic, and I always felt different in every period of my life, and it's like you feel like you never belong to, like 100% belong to the place you're in at the moment. And I remember one time I traveled to South America 2 years ago, and I remember meeting this French girl, and I tried to explain to her how difficult it is to live in Israel, and the Israeli society is so separated. We have Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews and Muslim Arabs, Christian Arabs. No one understands it except for the Israeli, I guess, but I think it's the same in every other country. But then I explained to her, you know, I have this. I am Israeli, I was born in Israel, I have many Jewish friends, but my history is Palestinian. My parents and my grandparents suffered from the wars, and they were deported from their houses, and this is an ongoing internal conflict. And you know, you need to choose when you live in Israel or in this region. You need to choose. And then she looked at me and she said, you can be both. And then it was my aha moment. it was like, okay, yeah, I can be both. Why not be both? And ever since, I think it's an advantage to be different. And in my personal life, it's always like this. It's always being an advantage to be different and give this different point of view to the places I'm in. And ever since this conversation, I'm both. I'm more than that.
So we have only a few seconds left, but I would like for each one of you on the panel to address the audience. Diversity as an asset here. What's one piece of advice, single sentence, where people can walk away with call to action? How can they use diversity, their own diversity, or the diversity that they're witnessing here in Israel, as an asset for what they're doing personally and professionally?
So I'd say go and watch Hidden Figures and copy what you see.
Well, I think, like for people from a minority background or feel like you have something different to contribute, speak up. And from people who are not, who generally feel quite comfortable in their environment, listen more.
Exactly. I would also say listen without a judgmental opinion. Just try and listen to people.
Thanks very much, everyone.